a lot of the well-designed homes that we see online are not actually realistically achievable for the average person. So here is part 2 of actually realistic home design inspiration. If you're new here, my name is Medora, and I make videos about actually realistic home design for the average person. So without further ado, let's get into it. And yes, as a side note, I did get the idea for my new tagline from this video that did really well. It also just feels like it fits better. I don't know. I'm kind of just like throwing pasta at the wall and seeing what sticks, but this feels right for right now. So without further ado, let's look at my inspiration. This first one is such a vibe. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the stripes, the minimalist bed frame, the wooden bench at the end of the bed, the corner floor to ceiling lamp that isn't quite 100% straight up and down, and then the shelves that are full of books. There's just something about this place that feels very lived in, but also doesn't feel like a mess, right? Like it's probably laundry day while they're doing this, hence no blankets or pillows on the bed. You can definitely see a box under the bed, so I would personally try to push that a little bit further under the bed so you can't see it. And the one thing I'm not completely in love with is the yellow skeleton hanging from the window, but I also kind of appreciate the weird pop of color, so I'm not even that mad at it. I think what I like most is the general cleanliness. Like nothing's perfect, but there are intentional stacks of magazines at the foot of the bed. There's a basket under the bench to hide the ugly things. All of the books and knickknacks are confined to the shelving area. And aside from the one nightstand and the one giant picture frame leaning against the wall, the floor is clean. This one, natural light. Easy. Yes, that chair is definitely a high quality chair, but like you can easily find stuff like this secondhand all the time. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the pendant shade was not DIY'd, but also it could be. We could figure out a way to make something like that. And then I'm not mad at like a slipcover on a couch, especially if you have a couch that's really old or outdated and you can't afford a new couch because couches are expensive. And I would highly recommend not buying a cheap couch ever. Just do your best to thrift a good quality old couch and then put a slipcover over it. This is such a lovely little office area, and I love how it's organized. I specifically really love that this person hand wrote all the little labels rather than using like a little printer thingy that does it for you, because that is not a vibe. But especially choosing these wooden boxes really brings so much more life into the space. And now granted, this is either a very small space or we can't see a lot of it. And with small spaces, you want to be really intentional about what you do in the space. So I honestly really love that they've kept it really simple and didn't really style anything specific, and instead just brought in one really nice element to organize the whole space and then kept it simple. This one is maybe a little bit harder to thrift, specifically the chairs, but finding a solid wood dining table like this really isn't that hard, at least where I live. And I don't live in like LA, but especially just the styling of this, super simple, one piece of art, one vase with flowers, and then some general daily living things. So good. And anything that's solid wood can be refinished. You can buff it out. You can remove scratches as long as it's not like completely broken. It's kind of just a matter of how much work you're willing to put into it. But more than that, it's just the styling. It's so simple. And while I do believe this was intentionally styled for this photograph, it also feels very realistic. There's one piece of artwork, one vase with some cheap flowers in it, some homemade chocolate bread, and a couple of teacups. It really feels like the kind of space where you just pull out a chair, sit down, drink your morning coffee, and write out your to-do list for the day. This next one is really fun because I love this little like bed bench thingy in the corner. I am having kind of a hard time figuring out exactly how big it is. Like, I can't quite tell if it's a twin-sized bed or if it's more of a bench. I think I'm getting bench vibes. And it feels like it could be one of those benches that's like upholstered with storage inside and it has like a seat lid that flips up. You know what I'm talking about, right? The ones that are like really ugly. But it looks like they just made a super cute slipcover for this out of a striped fabric. And it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't even look like it was sewed. It looks like they folded the corners in all neat and then like safety pinned it at the bottom or something. I love the solid wood coffee table. I love the solid colored rug. I love that you can see little cup rings, like water stains on the coffee table. I love that the leather couch is a bit worn. And I love this like shelving moment that they've created where it looks like there's a computer or a TV or something on here, but it's also kind of functioning as a media unit, but also kind of a desk. But the top of it is very intentionally left clear. There's one lamp and one vase of flowers on a stack of books. There isn't any clutter anywhere, and it really feels like everything has its own place. Nothing feels out of place. Oh gosh, this one. This one I'm gonna have to split up or scroll or something. This one was some photographer, and I don't think I wrote down the name of who this was, who went to one building on all the different floors and photographed the people living in their apartment. And I just think it's so fascinating. I love this thing hanging from his ceiling. Little sculptural moment there. Okay, ninth floor. We've got this old grandma, but like her space is very put together. Very, very not my style at all, but very put together. I love the curtains. I love that it looks like this little coffee table thing is on wheels and can kind of be like moved around. It feels very multifunctional that way. Again, just people living in their spaces. Very, very minimalist guy on the 7th floor. 6th floor, there's a vibe to it. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a vibe here. It's maybe a little too realistic for me personally, with all the cords everywhere, but like, there's something about it. 5th floor, this person has my heart. I am so happy to see how this person kind of like built their bed into this nook using curtains and then brought in this giant wood armoire, swapped out the light fixture, I presume. And she's got this beautiful seating area, and also it looks like kind of like a window seat type of thing right next to the open window. So this feels like someone I would want to get to know. She feels like the type of person who really enjoys life to its fullest. 4th floor is very fascinating, and it feels very pink for this person who on the surface appears to be a guy. And I know that that is gender stereotyping and everything, but like, it's just a fascinating choice. Maybe he's got a daughter here who lives with him, or maybe he just really likes pink. And that's okay too. 3rd floor, this guy is definitely very practical, and I'm not mad about it. The space is clean. I would like to see like the chairs and that table off to the side kind of pulled away from the wall, make it a little bit more of a moment. But other than that, a lot of fun. This feels like a movie set. I don't know what's happening here, but it feels like a movie set. And then 1st floor, again, so clean. Nothing special, but like, so clean. Okay, for this one, I know some of you are already down in the comments being like, those chairs are so expensive. Okay, yeah, sure. But let's think of these chairs as design elements here rather than fancy expensive chairs. I really love the warm mid-toned wood of the chairs right next to the black wood of the table. And again, very simple styling on the table. You can actually still use the table. It's going to be a very common theme here is minimal styling, usable surfaces, stuff like that. Now, I believe this is the space of a designer, but it is a very small space. I believe it was under 400 square feet. We've got the bed with the couch at the end, and I believe there is also a 2 or 3 foot walkway in between the couch and the bed, which makes moving throughout the space much more doable. But again, it's all coming back to very simple, very intentional styling. The coffee table styling is simple. The wardrobe styling is simple. The styling over by that plant stand by the window is simple. It's all simple. I love this one specifically because it's a very intentional use of color. We're going to paint the walls blue, and then we're going to do one pop of red. And that's essentially it. The blue looks good with the wooden floors, and then the pop of red just like adds that thing that your brain craves. Clearly not a very high-end space. But again, just being intentional with how you use it. I love the shelves that they've put in there. I love that there's nothing on the floor, because I could easily imagine this space being filled up with just like shoes and coats and whatever else, and it otherwise not being very intentional. But what they've done here just really makes it a moment, and it makes it feel intentional. Again, very simple, very clean. There's one picture on the wall, one lamp, one vase with a branchy thing in it. All of the books are confined to this nightstand bookshelf area, and I can't really tell what the stool is doing in here other than adding some visual interest or like what it's made out of, but whatever. A tablecloth is a fantastic way to cover up a very ugly table. Or if you don't even have a table and you have an old hollow panel door that's propped up with like sawhorses or cinder blocks or something. You don't even have to have a whole table for this. Just focus on the chairs. It's a lot easier to cover up a table than it is to cover up chairs. So this is a great solution for something temporary until you're like waiting to save up for a nice table or something like that. And again, it's very simple back here. It's just table and chairs. But essentially, I just really appreciate the way that they clearly put all of their time and energy and money into the chairs and then did a very like simple DIY solution for the table. And that feels like a very realistic way that people tend to manage their money. So props for that. Oh, here's another view of that same apartment, the designer's apartment. If this were anyone else other than a designer, I would say that these shelves filled with like vases and random little pretty things are not very useful for the average person. But considering this is a designer and this is literally stuff that they need probably for their job, I'll allow it. Because that is a lot of unused vases and bowls and stuff like that. But again, I love how simple and intentional everything is. This is probably the most realistic one we've seen so far, but the same points still stand. I love how everything has its own very intentional home. The dish towel is folded over the oven handle thing. The hot pads have their own little hooks on the fridge. We've got this magnetic shelf thingy for the paper towels and the olive oil and the salt and pepper. I appreciate the plant and the little pop of blue. And again, I just love that everything has its own space. Nothing feels too crowded. Nothing feels particularly messy. I would much rather go visit a friend who has a kitchen that looks like this rather than a friend who has like a beautiful $50,000 kitchen that they like clearly don't put any effort into maintain the functionality of the space. I love how we've made this little space next to the fridge that might otherwise go completely unnoticed into a very functional zone. My guess is that they bought or already had this little wine rack shelf drawer unit thingy. They kind of just put it there and then they were like, we need some more storage. Let's put some shelves above here. And I love how they matched the wood of the shelves to the wood of the existing storage piece because it makes it all feel very cohesive. And I kind of love that they used what looks like a regular silver metal here for the shelf brackets instead of white. Usually I'd prefer white so it kind of just blends in, but like there's something about this that makes it feel very industrial, and right next to the stainless steel fridge, I really like it. It is such an efficient use of space. And again, it just feels like one of those things where if you have an awkward little space and you just think about it for a minute and like figure out some different ideas that you could do, something will come to you. Although if it doesn't, I do have live community calls over on my Patreon where we go through these exact type of problems. If you've got an awkward little corner of your home, or if you're like not quite sure about how you want your furniture to be arranged or something like that, we all sit down together once a month. You do have to be ready to screen share or show on camera your space. And then we just like group problem solve together, and it's so much fun. So definitely head over to my Patreon if you want that. It's a very small group so far. It's been like 4 or 5 people at each one. So it is very much like a small group, high participation type of thing. But everyone has said so far that it just feels like hanging out and nerding out with your design friends. So again, if you would like that, that is patreon.com/medorakia. Again, nothing special. Very simple white square tiles, a wall that has clearly seen a lot of patches in its time, one really beautiful, like focal piece of art, and then everything else in the kitchen just looks like it has its own intentional home. I also really love this blue cutting board. Like I've never seen a cutting board in that color before, and I clearly love cobalt blue. So I feel like a broken record, but like clean, simple styling. It's all very intentional. Everything feels like it has a home. Again, like I said in my last video, that one Coco Chanel quote where it's like, once you think you have a space put together, just like take something away. Yeah, I really do feel like a broken record. Again, I would say we could maybe take away this like little canvas of wine bottles or whatever that is. But I love the pot rail. I love the little cart. I love the intentional stacks of books. I love how there is one pot and one pan instead of like a whole giant stack of pots and a whole giant stack. Like it's simple, it's intentional, it's clean. I do think there could stand to be like a mid-sized to large Dracaena plant in that corner, but that's just me. Now, I do feel like this space feels a little bit more lived in a way that I would love to see it a little bit cleaner, but also I love seeing people's homes when they weren't trying to be styled to be seen. Like we could definitely make the bed a little bit nicer. We could clean up some of the things on the desk, but overall, just having a quality antique desk rather than some cheap shit you found on Wayfair will go so far. Again, simple. We've got one lamp, one stack of books, one cluster of perfumes, and one little catch-all thing. But other than that, the top of the dresser feels clean. And I should really note that direct sunlight is such an under-acknowledged aspect of interior design. Like almost every single photo you see of a professionally designed house will either have natural sunlight streaming in like this, or a lot of times they'll even use their own artificial lighting to fake it, like just for the photo. And when you can't afford to be picky about what apartment you're in and like how much light it gets, I feel like that's just something we kind of need to acknowledge. This really should have been in my recent video about design ideas that spark joy, because this is just so cute. I love how this person's turned the little door lock chain thing into like a charm bracelet. Adorable. And also very like simple and affordable, especially if you're like a crafty type of person who already has these little knick-knacky things. What I love about this is they made one bold decision in the space, right? Going with like a dark burnt orange kind of all around the ceiling and the walls. But other than that, this is a pretty average tiny little kitchen with nothing super special. I wouldn't be surprised if the lemons and the branch and the towel were all, you know, intentionally styled for this photo. But like, I really love how simple they've kept it, and I love making a bold decision that actually pays off. Again, very simple, just a strategic use of color and one main art print on the wall. The bedding is very simple. The throw could very well be from IKEA, just a tiny little floating nightstand thing, and I am not mad at the space at all. I do love that if you're going to have some fun stuff out on display, I am going to safely assume that these are little painted doll figurines rather than other things that could be on a nightstand. I love how that just adds a little bit of whimsy to a space that otherwise could start to feel kind of cold. Again, we're keeping surfaces clear, styling simple and intentional. The space is definitely a little too modern and monochrome and boring for my personal taste, and I would love to see a rug in here. But other than that, it feels very cozy and functional, and I'm not mad at it. It looks like there's a ton of storage space in that TV console thing, and I love that there's extra little like stools and side tables to set things on, or that could be used as extra seating or whatever. This desk is adorable. I feel like something about it feels very college, very young adult. It's probably the collage of stuff like taped and tacked up onto the wall, but it looks like a real desk. It looks like a desk that you could see in anyone's home. And while it is a little bit more chaotic than I would personally like, although I am not one to talk because my desk area is a complete disaster. It still, for the most part, feels like everything has its own place and that things are constantly shifting around, and it's actually like getting some use. Because the worst thing is when you spend more money than you would like on a desk and then you don't use it. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna make this really beautiful, very cute, very cozy, very aesthetic office space, and then you just don't go in there to work. Don't ask me how I know. I'm just repeating myself at this point. A vase of flowers, stack of books, something cute on top, one piece of art. That is the formula. We have figured out the secret to interior design, and it is that formula. Kitchen, very functional. Kitchens really don't have to be super, super aesthetic as long as you keep them clean and functional with everything in its place. I wouldn't mind a little bit of a rug to cover up that fake vinyl flooring, and then like maybe a different boob light replacement type of thing, which check out my boob light replacements video here. I think it's that side. But otherwise, this is a super simple, super average apartment kitchen. And what really makes it work, especially on this back shelving unit thingy, everything has its place, and also everything has some breathing room around it, right? It's not super cluttered. You don't have things shoved everywhere. Nothing's falling off. Like there is enough space for you to be like, okay, visually, it's very clear that this is where these bowls go, or that this is where these pots go. And based on how this person has styled this kitchen, i.e. very minimally and very functionally, I wouldn't be surprised if that fan on top of the shelves is also a functional fan, but like it also doubles as decor. That's the vibe I'm getting. There is part of me that really loves aesthetics based on affordability, upcycling, recycling, patching things. And so putting some red flowers in this old tomato can that has a really cute image on the front of red tomatoes is just adorable. I feel like this one might be AI. I can't quite tell, but there are a few things that aren't fully making sense to me. Like the way that this plywood is kind of cut off here in the middle between those shelves, and then the plants that looks like it's coming out of nowhere. So if this one's real, let me know. But like, regardless of whether this is AI or not, I kind of love that they're using the product of unfinished plywood to be an intentional feature in this space. I don't love the track lights in the bedroom, but the divider wall with storage in it is such an incredibly good solution, especially when you still want to have some light come through, but you need that like visual separation and you also need storage. Something like this can make so much sense in a small space, especially a studio apartment where there isn't a dedicated bedroom. I love this. Again, very similar to that other kitchen with the wire racks that we saw. The simple act of like finding a perfectly functional piece of furniture that fits perfectly into the space that you want it to be in, that can make such a huge difference. Because if this shelving unit were any bigger or smaller, it would not feel super intentional. It could maybe be 1 or 2 inches longer, like width-wise, but I really think that the sizing plays such a key role here, because if it's too much bigger, it feels like it's in your way, it feels like you're going to run into it as you go in between these 2 doorways, and any smaller, it just wouldn't be as functional, it wouldn't hold as much stuff, it wouldn't feel like it was made to fit in this space. So always, always, always measure. Okay, let's do a few more and be done, because I am not in a talking mood today. I don't know if that was obvious, but my girlfriend's getting home from work soon and I want to be done. So this one is essentially what I guess I would call a modern cabin. Like it feels very unfinished. It feels very cabin-like. There is a wood stove. There's a lot of wood everywhere, but also it feels clean and put together in a way that a lot of cabins don't. right? We don't have any singing Billy Mouthpasses on the wall. We don't have any giant bear heads on the wall. We don't have any like kitschy decor with chickens on it or something. It's a very modern cabin in that way. And honestly, I would really love to see little shelves built into this open wall here, unless that wall is going to be closed off in the future. But I would love to see just little open shelves because as a room divider, it feels a little too open for me, a little too open concept. Like if you're going to have a divider there, it should visually divide the space. And I feel like right now it does not do that. But yeah, a few extra like little shelves in between those studs that you can put little random trinkets on would be super cute. I also specifically want to normalize the idea of physically building your own home. And I know this isn't for everyone, but I do feel like as living creatures on this earth that we have a right to build our own dwelling. And for a lot of us in a lot of different stages of our life, I know that's not going to be possible because a lot of that requires access to land and at least a certain amount of money. But I've personally been very interested in the idea of building my own house, whether it's a super tiny little cabin like this or a much larger house that I can actually kind of like contribute a little something to the architectural and design landscape. Okay, back to some simple styling. I feel like this is especially relevant in kitchens, but it also applies to the rest of your house. Whatever needs to be out on display, like things that you use every single day, make sure that they're pretty or make sure that they are hidden or camouflaged in some way. Based on this person's tag of Olive Atelier, which is a ridiculously fancy, expensive, aesthetic kind of place in LA, I'm guessing that these are not thrifted. But it is possible to thrift at least some of these things, depending on where you live. And I do really love how they've brought in kind of the grayish green along with the much brighter, more vibrant, more saturated green. And it kind of plays off of each other really nice in a way that I feel like I don't usually see very often. There's like a little bit of a conversation happening there between the greens, but it's not super in your face about it. Okay, and then last one. The text on this image says, "My sister decided to say, fuck it, and doesn't pay for Wi-Fi or TV subscriptions and just has a collection of TV shows and movies on DVD. She found a 16-inch box screen TV on Facebook Marketplace and a DVD player at the thrift store and called it good." And I love that. I am honestly working towards that. I do have a TV and a VCR player, but I haven't hooked them up yet. And then I do have a little DVD player that plugs into my computer. And I very much want to be getting rid of subscriptions. Not that I have many. I have like 2, but I would love to get rid of them eventually. So that's it for today's actually realistic design inspiration. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and also hype to let the algorithm know to show you more of my videos. If you'd like to win a makeover with me while I go on tour this summer, the link is down below. And if you'd like to get access to those community calls over on Patreon, head over to patreon.com/medorakia. Bye.